pues es el jugador que es un jugador muy sólido que no pierde casi ningún.
What would you say is his greatest attribute? Because there's lots of good bits, but is there one that stands out to you?
Broken against Sasha Zverev, faces 2 break points.
Yeah, we all knew that they were going to be good, that they were maybe going to be great, most likely, but we didn't expect, I think, this kind of a...
Nobody saw it coming. Not like this. They knew he would be good, maybe even great. That much was obvious the moment he stepped onto a tour full of legends. But great, in tennis, usually takes years to earn. It takes scars, losses, heartbreak, a slow climb toward the mountain summit. Jannik Sinner didn't climb the mountain. He walked straight through it. Right out of the gates, he was already dominating. And the men who know dominance better than anyone on earth, the ones who spent a decade sitting on the throne themselves, they watched him and they were stunned. Not impressed, stunned. Because this wasn't just a young player finding his footing. This was something else entirely. This was one of the greatest peaks in level that the sport of tennis has ever witnessed. And it kept happening match after match, tournament after tournament, until the whispers turned into declarations. Picture it, a crouched figure at the baseline, compact, coiled, almost small. You barely notice him until the ball comes and he springs, not swings, springs, like a predator that had been folding itself down just to explode outward. Former champions who have played the greatest to ever hold a racket say they've never quite seen court coverage like it. They compare him to Carlos Alcaraz, the electric, unpredictable showman who scrambles and slides and somehow always seems to find the ball. But Sinner is different, where Alcaraz chops and weaves forward and back, chasing chaos. Sinner simply arrives. Calm, early, devastating. And that's the terrifying part for anyone across the net. He doesn't hit a shot just to survive the point. Every single ball has a purpose. Every single shot moves him one step closer to the baseline, one step closer to control, one step closer to ending you. Analysts who've broken down thousands of matches say his greatest weapon isn't his serve or his forehand, it's his feet. That speed is what lets him do what almost nobody else can. He takes time away from you before you even realize it's gone. But here's where the story turns strange. Because physically dominant as he looked, there were cracks. Heat, body issues, moments in brutal conditions where his machine seemed to falter just slightly, just enough to make you wonder, was this it? Was this the crack in the armor that the rest of the tour had been praying for? And then came Roland Garros, a tournament where his body simply gave out, where the machine sputtered. Any other player, at any other moment in a career, might have spiraled, might have let the doubt creep in, let the frustration bleed into the next match, the next month, the next season. Sinner did none of that. He came back and said simply that it wasn't his day, that his body failed him, and that he needed to figure it out. No excuses, no theatrics, no unraveling in front of the cameras. Just a flat, measured acceptance, and then he moved on. People who have sat across from him after his biggest wins and his hardest losses describe the exact same thing. Calm. Big moments met with small words. Massive victories treated like just another day at the office. That composure isn't an accident. It's a weapon. Because tennis at the very top isn't only played with the racket, it's played in the mind. And against Sinner, the greatest returner the sport has ever produced could not break his serve. Neither could one of the hardest hitters on tour. In match after match, he faced pressure, real match-defining pressure, and simply refused to bend. One break point here, one break point there, and every single time he closed the door. Now think about what that actually means. Somewhere out there, across the net, stood a man who has beaten the very best players who have ever lived. A man who has grinded out 30-shot rallies against absolute walls of consistency, players who never seem miss, who track down everything, who turn every point into a war of attrition. And even that man, a former world number one himself, admitted something remarkable. That playing Sinner from the baseline is its own unique kind of suffering. That win or lose, you are going to struggle. There is no shortcut. There is no easy path through him. You fight, you exhaust yourself, and even then, the outcome is still no guarantee. And then there's the serve. Unpredictable, deep, loaded with spin, capable of exploding for speed when you least expect it. A second serve that doesn't give you the usual opening, doesn't hand you the free look that lesser players offer. Every shot backed up by aggression the instant afterward, a 1-2 combination designed to leave you on your back foot before the point has barely even begun. So the question becomes obvious, and it's the one every legend now finds themselves asking out loud. Where does this end? Some say he compares to the sport's most relentless competitor at his absolute peak. A player who barely missed, who suffocated opponents with time and space stolen away point after point. Others go further, wondering aloud whether, at their very best, both Sinner and his fiercest rival might even be favored against the greatest clay court champion the game has ever known, a man who won on that surface an almost unthinkable 14 times. But even the boldest voices pump the brakes at the history books. Because the peaks of the true legends, the ones who reach 20, 22, 24 major titles, remain almost untouchably high. The competition today is deeper. The hitters are bigger. The margins are thinner than they've ever been. Still, every rival who steps onto the court against him says some version of the same thing, that facing him demands absolute focus, every single shot, every single point, because he never lets up, never gives you space, never gives you time to breathe, that the challenge itself, brutal as it is somehow the very thing that makes them love the sport. So here we are, watching a young man build something that even the greatest of all time didn't expect, didn't predict, and can barely explain. Not with sudden brilliance, not with flashes of magic, but with something far more dangerous, relentless, quiet, unbreakable consistency. The question isn't whether Jannik Sinner belongs among the legends anymore. The question is how high the ceiling actually goes, and whether anyone alive is capable of stopping him from finding out. Think back to how quietly this all began. No fireworks, no manufactured hype, just a teenager grinding through the lower rungs of the tour while the spotlight stayed fixed on louder, flashier names. Nobody was writing headlines about him yet. He was simply doing the work, match after unglamorous match, building a foundation that nobody else seemed to notice was being poured. And then, almost overnight, the noise started. Wins piled on top of wins. Suddenly, the players who had spent their entire careers among the very best in the world were being asked, in press conference after press conference, to explain the unexplainable. How does a man barely into his 20s already move like this, already think like this, already carry himself like a champion twice his age? There's a reason those questions kept circling back to the same word. Proactive. Not aggressive in the reckless sense, not flashy for the sake of flash, but purposeful. Every single decision on the court built to gain an inch, then another, until suddenly the opponent looks up and realizes the point was lost 3 shots ago, and they simply hadn't noticed yet. And through all of it, the injuries, the setbacks, the scrutiny, the noise that surrounded him off the court just as loudly as on it, he never let the story write itself in panic. He let it write itself in patience. Next match, next point, next shot, simple, measured, relentless. That in the end may be the most unsettling thing of all for the players chasing him. It isn't the serve. It isn't the footwork. It's the complete absence of cracks where cracks are supposed to be. And as long as that holds, the mountain he's building